every organization, and I'm asking every CISO the same question. How many APIs do you have in the code? How many Gen AI technologies do you have in the code? Where across your 10,000 repos, where do you have PII data? They don't know these answers, but they do know how many containers they have in the cloud or how many endpoints, because they build an inventory. But in the AppSec program, they didn't build an inventory. Why? This is the fundamental concept in cybersecurity. If you don't know what you have, how you can protect and secure it.
If you are a company with about 700 to 15,000, 20,000 developers, this is an episode for you. We're talking about ASPM. I know we have another acronym in this world of cloud and AI that we're walking in, but this is important because after a certain point, you'll realize if you have that many developers, you have about, let's just say an average 3,000 commits per week, per day happening. And the number of changes that happen and how dynamically they're happening, it definitely begs the question for how we're keeping tab on the APIs. If you don't have an inventory of the application you're looking at, how are you even securing them? So this episode is inspired by the ASPM category that Gartner had announced. And now there's a lot of people who are in the space. And we spoke to Idan from Apiiro. And let me tell you, it was a passionate conversation. And we spoke about who is the ASPM for? As a leader who is trying to make a call on whether you need an ASPM or not, what kind of things that you should be looking out for in the ASPM world? After all, you've invested so much money on all the security products you bought. Do you really want to take any of them out, which is going to take weeks or months? Being mindful of that while still making sure that you're able to increase the number of commits and productivity of your developers while reducing the number of vulnerabilities being introduced in your production as well. If you know someone who's working on that ASPM space in that large enterprise, this is the episode for them. And if you're not in that large enterprise, it's a good episode for you to at least get an understanding for what it would look like as you move into the space of there's a lot of changes happening on a daily basis and how do you deal with security on that scale. All that and a lot more in this episode of Cloud Security Podcast. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Idan. And if you're here for a second or third time, I would really appreciate if you're watching this on YouTube, give us a subscribe. If you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, give us a 5-star rating and give us a follow as well. It does help us spread the word of the cloud security work we're doing here and giving you information that has been helping you do your job better and make intelligent decisions for the program that you're building for your organization. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Idan, and I'll see you next one. Peace. Welcome to Cloud Security Podcast. Recording now. Welcome, Idan. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
No, it's a pleasure, man. For people who may not have met you or heard about you yet, can you tell us a bit about yourself and cybersecurity career of yours?
So I am now 23 years in the cybersecurity.
You look 23 years yourself, by the way.
I started my career at the IDF in a cybersecurity unit as an engineer. I was there around 5 years. Then I become a practitioner or doing pen tests and security code review and risk assessment around 2 years. Then I founded my own consulting services company.
All right.
Sold it after a few years, started a startup. Through one of the pen tests, I found something interesting and I did a research. I wrote a patent based on this pen test that I've done. And I founded a company. We were the pioneers in the UEBA space. It's user and entity behavior analytics.
Oh.
It does not exist anymore. It's part of XDR now.
Okay.
And we sold the company to Microsoft in 2015. And at Microsoft, I was the GM for software engineering for Defender for Identity. And I felt the pain, or I would say the challenge of embedding risk management and application security processes and tools into the development lifecycle.
Yeah.
So instead of moving faster, we moved slower and it impacted our business. Then this was the catalyst to why we started Apiiro 4 years ago.
You guys are in that ASPM space. So in 2024, what is ASPM? How would you describe it if people probably are still not familiar with that acronym?
So application security posture management is actually inventory everything that you have in your code bases and across the development lifecycle. When you commit code, what is in this code, where it's being built, through which pipeline is going to be deployed to the cloud, and where it's running. This is ASPM. Now, visibility. On top of that, you have prioritization and remediation with a risk-based approach, not based on CVSS score or EPSS, but actually understanding the environmental scoring of where this vulnerability is running. What's the business impact of the application? Based on that, say, you have an impact on the business or not. This is the second layer of ASPM. And the third layer is to actually manage the governance process, prevent the developers from deploying risks to the cloud, and measure, saying, I want to see that my development velocity goes up, number of pull requests, merged, number of builds, while the risk is going down.
Yeah.
Before releasing to the cloud.
Interesting. Yeah, it should be inversely proportional. Sounds like something that only a certain level of organization is ASPM for everyone, every size of organization.
No, we see that organizations that has their own tools and they bombarded with vulnerabilities that they need the prioritization, or the large organization that needs compliance and governance throughout their development lifecycle. So the small companies, they're not going to use an ASPM, okay? Because they have 50 developers, 100 developers, so they can use commodity tools, open source tools, and the amount of vulnerabilities that they're getting is small amount. And the developers are still there. It will not affect the development velocity. When you have 1,000 developers, let's say above 500, the largest customer that we have with 17,000 software engineers. Okay.
Wow.
So this is the range where, between 500 to 20,000, this is where you need an ASPM. Now, in between, you have the ones that will want to use an ASPM with the built-in scanners or solutions like SAST, DAST, SCA, secret scannings, API security testing in code and stuff. And the large ones, they already invested in these scanners. So they want context, risk-based context, to prioritize, remediate, and prevent developers from delivering risks to production.
Interesting, because I was going to say that if the scale of people who can use ASPM is between 500 to 17,000, that's a big leap. And in most of those organizations, people already have a SAST tool, a DAST tool. There's already DevSecOps program. Everything else is already, there's a AppSec person, cloud person, everyone's already there. To your point about the three buckets that you referred to with ASPM, with the visibility, then there's a compliance governance bucket as well, and then in terms of having a risk posture. For people who are cybersecurity leaders and CISOs listening to this conversation, in 2024, what would you say if they are in that range of with that many developers, what should they include in their cybersecurity program?
I don't think that it's something that they didn't see. I think that what I would recommend them for these that already have the mature program with scanning tools is to have a layer, which is the ASPM, the layer of context on top of that.
Right.
And the context can be from the source code, from the code itself. It can be from the development environment. And it can be from all these controls that you put in place in the cloud, like your CSPM and WAF and other stuff, connected to the code. And I think, you know what, I will take one step back and I will say, every organization, and I'm asking every CISO the same question, and they don't know. How many APIs do you have in the code? How many Gen AI technologies do you have in the code? Where across your 10,000 repos, where do you have PII data? They don't know these answers, but they do know how many containers they have in the cloud or how many endpoints, because they build an inventory. But in the AppSec program, they didn't build an inventory. Why? This is the fundamental concept in cybersecurity. If you don't know what you have, how you can protect and secure it. I would say that this organization needs to start with inventory across their AppSec program. What they have inside the code and where this code is being built and delivered and eventually running in the cloud. You don't need to protect it, but you need to know the basic questions. What my developers are doing, how many APIs they're adding to my code every day, which Gen AI technologies they're using in the code base, where this data is written into logs, database, which databases in my code my developers are using. They don't know that. They know it, some of it from the cloud, but it's too late when it goes into runtime. You want to prevent, this is the KPI of AppSec. The number of risks should go down before you deliver to the cloud. This is the KPI.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because cost is lower to fix it.
Exactly. And if you are not doing it, you're not doing your job well. And if you don't know what you have, how can you get the risks down? I can prove it in the data. I don't have my laptop here, but I can show you that when you have 1,000 developers, you have 3,000 pull requests a day or between a day and a week. 3,000 pull requests. You know how much new changes are getting into the code, which means new APIs, new technologies, new dependencies. It's complex.
Yeah.
Your attack surface is literally changing every day.
Yeah.
And you don't know it. And you're waiting until the CSPM will detect all these things.
Yeah.
Why? You need an ASPM to understand the attack surface, understand the changes, understand what you have, build this inventory, and based on the data in the inventory, you can define guardrails, which are not based on CVSS. It's great, but it's not enough. It's based on a lot of data that you gather together, and you stop the developers only on what will impact the business. And I do want to say that there is an element of deep knowledge of the code, and there is an element of openness, because these organizations, they already invested a lot of time and money and effort in their programs. You cannot come and say, hey, remove now your SCA and secrets and SAST tool. You cannot do that. You need to come with a platform that says, great, you already invested in these tools.
Let me pull them in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let me enrich them. Let me contextualize the finding. Let me deduplicate the findings. Let me understand if this is used in your code or not, if this is exposed, if it's involved sensitive data.
Also, to your point, because my first thought was going to be that exactly what you said. As a CISO, I've already bought into the SCA, SAST, as well as the DAST world. Everything, all of this, including a CSPM, probably 2 CSPM, depending on how big they are. A lot of the challenges has been the fact that these are all silos in a lot of companies. But you keep referring to AppSec teams as well. Is it because it's an AppSec challenge, or is it more of, because who's supposed to be doing this, I guess, in your mind?
Before I will answer, you said something super important. You said silo. What we see is that when you get an alert from a SAST, an alert from an SCA, an alert from secret, they are connected. And when they are connected into a toxic combination, this might take the impact and the likelihood higher in the risk assessment. So these tools, they don't see each other. So this is one of the core capabilities of an ASPM, a deep ASPM, is to understand the usage of these vulnerabilities or alerts together. But now, to your question, it's a shared responsibility. AppSec needs to manage the process. They understand governance, they understand risk, they understand security. Developers don't understand these words, okay? So you need a platform to enable them to codify or define their risk in a very simple way, and then translate that into a developer language in the development toolchain. Because the developers own the remediation of the process. They need to fix it because they know their code. The AppSec cannot fix the risk, okay? They can say when you pass the risk appetite or threshold and then prevent you and provide you the guidance of how to fix it, but the developers own the remediation.
That's right.
So the AppSec owns the governance and the prioritization, the developers own the remediation. And they don't want yet another tool. No way. So if you want to be a successful ASPM, you need to be open. Open means to connect to your pull request and connect to your Jira or Slack or Teams, whatever the developers are using.
Or even SCA and SAST tool as well.
Of course. This goes without saying. I'm saying the developers doesn't care about SCA.
They don't, I love the example of the fact that they need to be open to be okay to connect to a PR, connect to a Slack, connect to SCA, connect to SAST, because
connect to build. Or even trigger a process when you just do a git push to your SCM, source control manager, which is before you open the PR, which is earlier.
Pretty much, I love this because we started the conversation with openness, deep visibility, and the depth part is interesting as well because a lot of AppSec people, CloudSec people at the moment are siloed, and there is this whole notion that, hey, AppSec and CloudSec is going to combine at some point. Do you feel ASPM is that beginning of where now all of that is being brought in together?
I would say no.
Okay.
It will connect everything together, but it will not unify the personas. The persona of the cloud security, they don't understand code. They don't understand application architecture. They do understand cloud architecture.
Yeah, yeah.
If you will ask them to design end-to-end microservice architecture and stuff like that, and which firewalls do I need and which encryption in the cloud do I need, they can do that.
Yeah.
But if you will ask them how to structure this code module that will be scalable with ingesting this amount of data.
In Java as well.
In Java, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a totally different knowledge
Yeah.
that they have. It's not only that, it's also the KPIs. The KPIs of cloud security is different than the KPIs of AppSec. And what I learned throughout my career is that it's hard to sell to a different persona. You can have the same technology,
Yeah.
but to sell to a different persona with a different language,
Yeah.
with a different KPIs, with a different sales process, it's hard. So this is why I think maybe ASPM will bring the data from runtime and from cloud to the left side,
Yeah.
but to make a better decisions throughout the development lifecycle. Because the developers own the remediation, you will use the CSPM context to say,
enrich.
hey, this API that you have a vulnerability now, it's exposed to the internet. You know that through the CSPM. But who is the code owner? You need it from a deep ASPM that actually scans the code and say, you're the code owner of this API, which is a huge problem, by the way, in AppSec. Maybe in small organizations where the budget is tight and you will have one person on CloudSec and AppSec, yes.
Yeah.
And he will be maybe more as a generalist and he will know what to pass to developers or what to pass to DevOps.
Yeah.
But in the large enterprises, I don't think that it will happen in the next, you know what? I don't want to say never, okay? So in the next 3 to 5 years,
Yeah.
I don't think that in large enterprises, this is something that will happen. And by the way, it's also a compliance issue because you need a segregation of duties. You need segregation of duties for someone that owned, take accountability and responsibility, do a secure release. And it's not the accountability and the responsibility of the cloud. They need to make sure that you are not being breached and that you have uptime, which AppSec doesn't care about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably, to your point, is the exact opposite thing, that they would not even know how to do it.
Yeah.
So there is that gap as well. And I agree with large enterprises who have been doing this for years. It didn't even happen on-premise. If you think about it, leave the cloud conversation aside, one would have thought if all of our goals are unanimous in we need to protect applications, and we have had sysadmins, network security people for so long, but that never merged into AppSec. It's always a developer who turns into an AppSec person because to your point about the knowledge of the code, the software architecture, everything that goes behind it. Another thing that is adding on to these days is the whole supply chain and XBOM, or XBOM as you guys call it.
Yeah.
What is XBOM and what's the context of supply chain and XBOM that you're probably highlighting?
Sure. Maybe I supposed to say it at the beginning of the conversation, but we developed a technology. It's a patent technology that called DCA, Deep Code Analysis. This is the technology. Now, what this technology is doing is scanning code repo throughout the history, because, for example, SAST scans a file, snapshot.
Yeah.
What we did, we took deep scanning across the history and translating code into entities. Entities actually assembled an application. APIs, data models, authentication framework, GenAI frameworks, and more, and connect them on a graph. This is the technology. SBOM came to life many years ago, software bill of materials, saying, show me a list of all your open source dependencies. Great. But it's not enough. This does not represent all the ingredients of your application. It's, you will tell me this sandwich, okay? It's assembled from, I don't know, whatever, one ingredient. No. It's multiple ingredients, okay? So what we did, we called it an extended SBOM. Of saying it's not a list, it's a graph. First and foremost, it's a graph.
So and it's dynamic.
It's dynamic, but it's also connected to each other. So if you have an API, this API using open source dependency, they're connected. And this API exposes PII data, which is another node. It's connected. So what we are saying, it's a graph of all these components that actually assembled your application attack surface.
Yeah.
And this is what we called an extended SBOM. And when you connect us to the source control manager, you can export an SBOM from Apiiro, okay?
Yeah.
But we also offered you to export an XBOM because this will represent your application attack surface. And it will help your pen testers to understand your application better. It will help you understand the risk better. This is the context that we're creating to assess the risk. It will help you put guardrails in a better way.
Yeah.
And this is the difference between a list of open source dependencies versus a graph of everything is connected, and it's not only open source dependencies.
Static versus
make
dynamic.
sense?
It does, yeah. I think the dynamic nature of it definitely makes more sense as well.
And it changes every day.
Yeah.
Like literally every day.
Yeah, if you're having 3,000 commits being made on a daily, weekly basis,
Crazy.
It's already changing by the time you even made it available on the internet. Those are most of the technical questions I had for you. I've got 3 fun questions. I think you've done this so far, but I'm curious there if your answer is a bit different. First one being, what do you spend most time on when you're not working on solving the ASPM challenges of the world?
I have 2 things in life, family and work. That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
That's all I can do.
I used to go surfing, okay?
Nice.
Kite surfing, wave surfing.
Oh, wow.
I don't remember when the last time I did it. I have my 2 amazing kids and wife and a dog.
Yeah.
that I don't see them a lot. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't see them a lot because, you
Work.
know, work and building a company, it's a big commitment. Okay. But that's it. This is where I spend my time, like with the family or at work.
Very well said.
And I will tell you a secret that my wife will not hear. When I'm with my family, I think about work.
It's like, ASPM. It's like, wife is like, what? It's like, nothing. Second question, what is something that you're proud of that is not on your social media?
I am proud. It's not publicly yet. Very proud on the last few huge deals that we did at Apiiro. Huge logos that I don't think that a company or a startup in our size can go and close these deals.
Wow.
And I'm so proud of the team because it's a team effort.
Yeah.
Across the board, product, engineering, marketing, sales, partnerships. It's like you see these things connected together into a result.
Yeah.
And it's not publicly available yet on social.
One day.
Hopefully very soon.
Hopefully. Final question. What is your favorite cuisine or restaurant that you can share?
I think I told you that in our last interview. I like meat. and,
All forms.
and in Israel, there is an amazing restaurant. When you will come to Israel,
Tel Aviv?
Not now.
Okay. I mean later.
You don't want to come now. But I will take you to a restaurant in Herzliya called Meat Bar.
Oh, it's called Meat Bar as well.
Meat Bar, high-end meat restaurant.
Yeah, okay.
Amazing.
That's most of the question I had. How can people find out more about Apiiro and what you're doing, and where can they connect with you as well about all of this?
So of course, LinkedIn, but also apiiro.com, apiiro.com. We just launched a partner and integration program through our openness ethos at Apiiro.
Yeah.
So it's called Shine.
Okay.
So our partners can shine with us and with our deepness and the inventory.
Yeah, nice.
So everyone can shine together.
Yeah.
So you can go and check it out online.
Yeah.
That's it.
I'll put that link in there as well. But Nadu, thanks so much for coming on the show. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Finally doing it in person as well. I appreciate this. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening or watching this episode of Cloud Security Podcast. We have been running for the past 5 years, so I'm sure we haven't covered everything cloud security yet. And if there's a particular cloud security topic that we can cover for you in an interview format on Cloud Security Podcast, or make a training video on tutorials on Cloud Security Bootcamp, definitely reach out to us on info@cloudsecuritypodcast.tv. By the way, if you're interested in AI and cybersecurity, as many cybersecurity leaders are, you might be interested in our sister AI Cybersecurity Podcast, which I run with former CSO of Robinhood, Caleb Seamer, where we talk about everything AI and cybersecurity. How can organizations deal with cybersecurity on AI systems, AI platforms, whatever AI has to bring next as an evolution of ChatGPT and everything else continues. If you have any other suggestions, definitely drop them on info@cloudsecuritypodcast.tv. I'll drop that in the description and the show notes as well, so you can reach out to us easily. Otherwise, I will see you in the next episode. Peace.